I'm 8 years old, and I'm with my sister and my cousin Bonnie in our garage. And Bonnie's playing with my hands, and I feel like electricity is running through my entire body. I look in the mirror and I think, Spencer, you look amazing. To the left of me, my sister is putting on her makeup in her own mirror. Bonnie's painting my fingernails. I'm looking in my own mirror, and I'm wearing this like white nightie with a tie in the front, and off to the side of me is a pair of clear high heels covered in silver sequins. And I cannot wait to put them on my hands because we're putting on a play and it's gonna be awesome. Now, as I pick up the blue eyeshadow to start putting my makeup on, the screen door to the garage opens and I hear my dad say, "Hey, what's going on out here?" Now, my dad has this like huge personality and he's got one joke that he tells everyone. He'll say, "I can't wait for tomorrow." And when you say, "Why?" He'll say, "Because I get better looking every day." Now, my dad takes one look at me and says, "What are you doing? Boys don't wear makeup." I freeze. And then my mom comes out and she says, "Kenny, he's fine." And they both go back inside. Now, I'm mortified. My dad just called me out in front of my sister and my cousin. And on top of that, I'm confused. How can something that feels so good be wrong? And then I feel a lot of shame. And I think, well, maybe it is wrong? And although he didn't actually say the words, I felt like I disappointed him. And I didn't want to disappoint my dad. So my dad wasn't the only person giving me a hard time for doing things that were considered masculine. Now, all throughout my school career, especially in grade 6, kids would say things like, "Why are you playing with the girls at recess? Are you a faggot? Why are you into choir? Boys aren't into choir. That's so gay." And every time I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why are these things bad? And besides, I had a girlfriend. Hava Cook and I were going out, and a week before, we had gone to Joyce's Subs to get a sandwich. So we were 12 and we didn't understand what going out meant, and my mom had to drive us to get the sandwich. But still, I had a girlfriend. And oftentimes, I was the first boy to do these kinds of things. I remember our first school dance. All of the boys just stood against the back wall. I was like, this is ridiculous. So I rolled up to Allison and I said, "Do you want to dance?" She said, "Sure." And then some of the boys afterwards, I could hear under their breath being like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool. I guess we could do that too." But it was hard because, I definitely knew that I wasn't into things that guys were typically into. And, I was reminded of this by my dad, and not explicitly or intentionally, but he would want me to go fishing or hunting with him. And, as a kid, it was fun to hang out with my dad. But as I got older, I didn't want to go hunting, and fishing was like super boring. On top of that, my dad was a huge basketball star in high school, and he never said the words, but I always felt like I disappointed him by being his only son and not being into sports. I was more into my mom. We had the same things in common. We loved to shop, and we used to listen to Cher's Heart of Stone album on repeat. And then when I was 13, I found someone at my school who was into the same things that I was. My friend John, who, just as an FYI, also had girlfriends, wanted to be in choir, and he also liked playing with my sister's Barbies. Now, I didn't think that I would ever find another guy that was into the same things that I was. I was thrilled. And John had this way about him that made him get called names and teased even worse than I did. He was super affectionate and super loving, and he used to say things like, "Hey, hon." And I remember being on the playground with him once, and a couple of kids called him a faggot. And from across the playground, I said, "If you call him a faggot again, I'm gonna beat you up." But what was I gonna do? I don't have any legs and I'm 2'7" tall. Punch him in the nuts and run away? Come on. Anyway, around that time, there was one evening in particular, I was out playing in the front yard with my sister, and my dad was in the garage, and I heard my dad say, "Spence, come here, I wanna ask you a question." So I went into the garage and I said, "What's up, Dad?" And he looked at me and he said, "Are you fagging out on me?" And in that moment, I froze. My face got really hot. I felt embarrassed and panicked. And all I could think of was, quick, prove that you're not. And I was like, "What? No, Dad, what? Come on." And he was like, "Okay, just checking." I'm like, ugh. I get called this at school, and now I'm getting it from my dad too? This is exhausting. Then a couple months later, I met Marcy. And Marcy and I did way more than get a sandwich. We were in love. She was amazing. She was my first kiss. We fooled around a little bit. We would talk about getting married and what our kids' names would be. We lasted more than a sandwich. So it's the last year of high school, and I'm at home with my family, and the news is on. And the story comes on, and we all know the story because up until this point, no one really cared about Wyoming, where I grew up. But we'd been in the national news for days, and it's because a few days before that, two men at a bar had offered to give a university student named Matthew Shepard a ride home. But they didn't take him home. They drove him out to the middle of nowhere, beat him beyond recognition, and they tied him to a fence and left him for dead. But tonight, the anchor comes on the news and says, "Heartbreaking news out of Wyoming tonight, as Matthew Shepard has died." And the police are now calling this brutal attack a hate crime because Matthew Shepard was gay. In that moment, I felt scared. It felt like, for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, the world isn't always a safe place. And being who you are puts you in danger. And, this happened 4 hours away from where I lived. And he was the thing that John and I get called. So I found myself, moving through the world a bit differently after that. I avoided talking about musical theater and playing with Barbies as much, and I would talk about dating girls more, all in hopes to be seen as more hyper-masculine. And then I went to university in Salt Lake City, which is a very religious town. And one of the things that I noticed right away is that everybody was obsessed with coupling up and getting married. Now, by this time, Marcy and I had split up, and although it's sad, we both decided to go our different ways because we were both going to different universities, and it was the right thing to do. So there's this girl that I work with at Old Navy, and she's super fun, so I ask her out on a date, but, there's nothing really romantic about it. So I start asking a few other girls out, but we're talking about her feelings, and I'm just not really into them the way that I know that I need to be if I'm gonna marry one of these people. And I'm just like, maybe I'm just this pretty evolved guy, and I'm a bit more sensitive, and I'm just a bit more picky. I'm not your typical man into sports or beer, so romance is just gonna be a bit different for me. So I get through my first year of university, and I'm not loving it. I have terrible roommates, I failed a class for the first time in my life, and I ended up changing my major at the end of the year. Now, another year goes by, and I eventually get my own place off campus, and that summer, John comes to visit me. And we're hanging out, we're sitting on my balcony, and he says to me, "By the way, I think I'm gay." And I was like, "Wow, that's so great, I'm so happy for you." And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense. Now, I'm so happy for him, and his confidence seems to have boosted, and he just seems like a different person. I go back to university, and somehow, it feels even harder. I'm still not fully liking school. Dating girls isn't really working out, and, I'm trying to balance school and my job at Old Navy. And then something shifted. One night that semester, I'm sitting on the floor of my bedroom, and I'm staring at my phone, and I'm thinking, just dial the number, just dial the number, just dial the number. There's only one light on in my room, and it's one of those desk lamps. And it's the kind that's got the little black knob on the top that you turn. And for some reason, it's pointed right over me, and it's really hot in my room because it's cold outside, and I have the heat up too high. Now, I eventually take a breath, and I pick up the phone, and I dial the number, and it starts ringing, and I think, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But I think, no, I can't hang up. And eventually I hear, "Hello?" And it's John, and he says, "Hey, hun, how are you?" And I say, "I'm fine, how are you?" And then I take a breath and I say, "I think I'm like you." And John says, "What do you mean?" "I think I like guys too." And then I freeze, and my face gets hot, and I feel embarrassed, and I'm so panicked, and I feel like I'm gonna pass out, and I'm so terrified. And then John says, "Oh, honey, I'm so happy for you." And it's like this burst of light is exploding in my stomach and traveling up through my chest and through my arms and out my face, and I'm laughing and smiling and crying all at the same time. And then almost immediately after that, I crumble. And I feel like I've been holding on to something for so long. And now I can just let it go. And all I can think is, this is the beginning of something new. It's 6 months later, it's Father's Day, So I pick up the phone to call my dad, and I'm a little bit nervous because, not too much, because I don't think he's gonna bring it up, but you never know. And then my dad answers the phone, he says, "Hello." And I'm like, "Hey Dad, happy Father's Day." And he's like, "All right, thanks, bud." Now, a week before, I'd come out to my mom, and I was hoping she'd be okay with it, and 99% of me was sure that she would, but there was that 1% of me that was terrified. Now, she told me later that she had told my dad, and that he felt the same way. So before I could get another word in, my dad says, "You're my son and I love you no matter what. And I don't care if you're gay, and you could never disappoint me." And then he says, "But when are you gonna adopt me some grandkids?" Now, this is just my story. There's so many other coming out stories, and I recognize the privilege that I have of having really accepting parents and community. But I know that's not everyone's story. So to all of you that have come out, or in the process of coming out, or thinking of coming out, I see you. And I want you to know you're not alone. And I wish you support and courage and light. And to the allies watching, thank you for showing up, for painting our nails, for marching, donating, and being by our side. We need you. Thank you.